Good afternoon, Alabama. This is Channel 26 News. I'm Katie Thompson reporting to you with Thurgood Marshall. With all the interest in the civil rights movement, we at Channel 26 News want us to keep our viewers informed on the latest topics and important figures in this movement. Mr. Marshall is a prominent figure in the civil rights movement. He is an attorney who has represented and has won many cases dealing with African Americans' rights. Please welcome Mr. Thurgood Marshall.
Nice introduction.
You're welcome. Have a seat.
Thank you.
Before we get started, Mr. Marshall, how about you tell us about your childhood?
Well, I was born on July 2nd, 1908 in Baltimore, Maryland. My mother's name was Norma and my father's name was William. My mother was a teacher and my father was a waiter. We were not poor like some other black families, but we also were not rich. My parents were very strict on education and discipline. Every time I got into trouble, I would have to memorize sections of the Constitution. After graduating high school, I attended Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. I attended law school at Howard University, then started my law career.
Mr. Marshall, why did you join the NAACP and what type of work did you do for them?
I started working for the Baltimore chapter of the NAACP in 1934. I joined the NAACP to make a difference in the lives of many African Americans. I felt I needed to change the injustice that was being placed upon the African American race. I worked on cases dealing with civil rights like Murray versus Pearson. This was my first major win.
Mr. Marshall, you're well known for winning the case Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka. Can you share with us some of the details that are involved with this case?
I think what most people fail to understand about this case is that it wasn't tried in just a few weeks. The initial lawsuit was started in 1951 and not only involved the Brown family, but 13 other families who had tried to enroll their black children in white schools. This case was of course lost at the state level. Time and time again, such cases were ruled against based on the Plessy versus Ferguson finding, which allowed separate but equal schooling for blacks. Therefore, I knew we would have to attack this case based on showing that separate was not resulting in unequal opportunities, or was resulting in unequal opportunities. Unfortunately for black children, the Board of Education of Topeka was spending $150 per white student and only $50 per black student. I think that alone speaks for the lack of equality the school system provided under segregation. This case was taken on by us at the NAACP and appealed to the Supreme Court in 1951. Because there were similar cases to this one from a variety of other states, it was decided that they would be fought as one. We first presented our case to the Supreme Court justices on December 9, 1952. I argued that segregation in public education produced unequal schools for blacks as compared to whites. I also argued that black children were no different from anyone else and deserved an equal chance to be educated. We presented our case for 3 days to the court. The justices then took their time to come to a verdict. Actually, several months went by, and in the several ruling, we were asked to give more information. Unfortunately, a justice passed away before a decision was reached, so we had to again present our case to the court in 1953. It was not until May 17, 1954 that a ruling was given. As you know, that ruling being that separation of blacks and whites in the public school system was no longer allowed.
I would guess that must have made you feel quite victorious.
Yes, I knew we had just leaped a huge hurdle. However, I also knew that many states would still fight this decision and that it could be many years before desegregation would actually occur. I also knew that there would be a lot of resistance in the Deep South.
I've read that you've experienced not being allowed to attend school solely based on your skin color, Mr. Marshall. Can you please tell us about that?
I guess you're referring to the University of Maryland Law School. Yes, I did apply and was rejected based on the fact I was a black man. I was disappointed in the fact I was not given a chance to prove myself there. This only made me work harder at law school at Howard University. Later on, I would try a case, Murray versus Pearson, for a student who, like me, was rejected from the University of Maryland Law School. It felt very satisfying to win that lawsuit and make that school accountable for their actions.
I've been told you're quite the supporter of the U.S. Constitution. Would you elaborate on that?
Let me start off by saying I know that document very well. As a child, I would get in trouble at school. My punishment was to memorize sections of that document, so I became well versed in the Constitution at an early age. It is all there in the Constitution. We must just uphold it as a country. That is basically all the civil rights movement is asking of our country. The document already exists. Let it be upheld.
Mr. Marshall, you're employed at the NAACP. Could you please tell us about this organization?
Well, let me first state that the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People is a widely known civil rights organization. It was originally formed in response to the violent acts being committed against blacks, such as lynchings. Originally, members such as W.E.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells Barnett, and Mae Church Terrell were brave to answer this calling. The NAACP's principal objective has always been to ensure the political, educational, social, and economical equality of minority U.S. citizens. The organization seeks to remove racial discrimination barriers through the democratic process. We are able to offer legal counsel to those who might not be able to fight or afford counsel to fight against racial discrimination.
What would you consider the key conviction in your work, Mr. Marshall?
I believe integration and only integration can allow for equal rights under the law to take hold in our country. Once one's rights are accepted, then it is up to the individual, whether black or white, to succeed or fail based on their own ability.
Mr. Marshall, do you have any sympathy for the white Southerner and the fact they are having to change the way of life based on the new federal rulings?
I understand that change can be a frightening thing. However, things are always changing and usually for the better. I do not think one can stomp on another man's rights and justifying their own. I truly believe that only by working through the courts can we have a profound and lasting effect on race relations.
Well, thank you, Mr. Marshall, for coming. We're glad you've explained the impact of the civil rights movement and how you yourself have impacted it. We hope to see you doing great things in the future, like becoming our first Black Supreme Court Justice. Well, thank you for watching. We'll be taking a commercial break right now, and we'll be back with the weather.